We are officially recording. So, I was talking to Ayden about this. There is a document that has been making the rounds. People have been talking about it in the files. And I found it. Yes, I am little. Let me see it. And here we are. So, you want to know why we are not Sao Paulo? Watch the TV ads on the Super Bowl. It's all about the hip blacks in hip cars with white women. The group should be the group that should be in the streets has been bought off by Jay-Z, Just Stanley, Blue Mountain Capital. This email is intended only for the person or entity in which it was addressed and may contain confidential and/or privileged material. Okay, that's the disclaimer. That is the extent of the email, aside from the disclaimer. Now, this is from Just Staley to Jeffrey Epstein. And so he was talking about, like, why we will never revolt. What happened to Sao Paulo in 2014. We're going to find out. Let me see what happens when I look it up. What happened? Because that email was sent in 2014. A massive civil unrest driven by widespread protests against the 2014 FIFA World Cup and public spending. Beginning in early 2014, the metropolitan area, home to over 20 million people, faced its worst drought in 80 to 100 years. By October, the vital Cantonaria reservoir system dropped to critical levels, forcing the city to pump emergency reserves and prompting unofficial water rationing and pressure drops that left many taps dry. So, and it sounds like that was like part of the initiating factor. But then it goes on to have full-on civil unrest after the FIFA World Cup. Yeah, they became a focal point for massive demonstrations. Activists and labor unions staged strikes across the city, protesting the billions of dollars spent on the tournament, while public services like transportation, education, and housing suffered. I think I actually remember this when I was in high school, and then they ended up, as I saw it in the news about how, like, detrimental FIFA can be. So that's why they are talking about, like, why we're not like Sao Paulo is because we will not revolt in that scenario. So this document actually appears in a duplicate document, and it looks like we have a printed version. I'm guessing this is a printed version, and we have the, like, original as you probably would have seen it in the email version. But it says exactly the same thing. Now, I thought this was interesting given the J.D. Vance interview, because I don't know how you felt about the whole J.D. Vance interview, but what I thought was interesting is, like, he starts with some stuff that I largely agree with, and then he ends with some stuff that I largely agree with, and some very interesting stuff about aliens. And then I realized, oh, you know what? He's doing this intentionally. He is trying to make himself look good for the presidency. That's what's going on. That's my theory. My theory is J.D. Vance wants to become president, and he is doing the Joe Rogan interview in order to look good. And I think that's why did you notice that he tried to take a more middle ground approach to the Iran war, and then how Gen Z is struggling, and the cultural conflict that we're having with Gen Z, with the socialist versus capitalist mindset in Gen Z? Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Because
like, he really didn't focus in on that. or at least not to the extent of, because it's an extremely important issue, especially like just towards the culture and how America will be run going forward. Like it's kind of it's literally the turning point.
Yeah, we got turning points going on in the United States. That's for certain. And well, I do like what he said at the end, where he's like, he was explaining like how there's some truth that Gen Z does. I don't know. I maybe didn't touch on this, but I was looking at this graph today. What was that graph? Maybe I'll find it. But there was this graph. There was this graph where it was explaining how basically all luxury goods have drastically decreased over time in terms of prices, and all necessities have gone up over time, especially housing, college tuition, child care, medical care services, and housing. Now, it did say average hourly wages were going up relative to like housing, but I disagree. I actually think that's incorrect. Now, the problem is with housing, it's a little bit harder to gauge than it is with, like, say, an education or childcare, because it's like, what is your average house in 2026 versus the year 1980? The average 1980 house would have no smart devices, would be a lot smaller, and they would have all had AC, or at least the majority. But the point is like the average 1980 house, in terms of how much money you would be putting in to building the house, would be significantly less, because that was the trend. And for some weird reason, in the United States, we've been building these ginormous houses, like they're basically McMansions, that no one can afford and nobody really wants. That's the interesting thing. So, where is this from? Select U.S. consumer goods and services and wages. I'm going to see if I can pull it up. Yeah, so here I'm looking at from 2000 to 2021. In that case, housing, I don't know if housing has even gone up above that, but the average hourly wage, if you're looking at like, all the important stuff, education, housing, and food, for crying out loud, education, housing, medical services, childcare, all the important stuff, all of that has gotten more expensive. Whereas if you look at new cars, household furnishings, clothing, cell phone services, computer software, toys, and especially TVs. Oh my goodness, you can get a flat screen TV. You can get a smart flat screen TV for free if you know where to look. I kid you not. All of that just has dropped drastically in the last 21. Well, and this was a 21-year observance. But even in the last 26 years, toys have gone down drastically, and no one's even buying their kids toys. They're buying them like tech stuff. Here's my argument for anyone who's watching. Average income 1970. Okay, so we're looking at median household income in the United States was $8,730, while the median money income for families was slightly higher at $9,870. So we'll go with the higher one of those two, the 9,870. We're going to round up to 10,000, make it easier to keep track of. Average house price. The average house price at the higher end, when looking at the numbers they're giving us, was $26,600. $26,600. Okay, so in other words, that would be like 2.5, just a little bit more than 2.5 times the annual wage for your average worker back in the day. Okay, down here it even says something. For comparison, that same $23,400 home would cost roughly $180,000 to $211,000 when adjusted for the for 2024 to 2025 inflation. So, for comparison, I make above average for the nation. I make above average. Average income in the United States is about, actually depends, I think it depends on what statistics you're going at, but it's about $50,000. So average income is about $50,000, right?
Yeah.
Well, the lower end is $180,000 for the same house back, if we're adjusting for inflation, back in 1970. All right? That is more than 3 times the amount of the average income. Let's look at the average income today. Average income today. Continue without address. Leave me alone. Oh, okay, never mind. I am looking at I'm slightly under, but I am in a cheaper state. I thought it was above. This seems wrong. I think this is incorrect. I don't think this is correct, because National Wage Index. Huh. Yeah, I need something more valid. Okay, $60,000? Seriously? I know I'm making more. Okay, so that's more than I make. But median personal income, which is less skewed by extreme high earners, is closer to $61,984. That is still a little less than 1/3 the price of the house on the lower end that would have been adjusted for inflation of when you go consider $180,000. Average house price today. The median home price in the United States is roughly $436,000 for single-family properties. Dang. Compare that to the average income of $61,000. So we're talking like 8 times as much. Almost. It's like 7.5 times. Great. That's fantastic. Yeah, that comparison, if you're comparing like the average income to the average cost of a house in 1970 to today, there's no it's so much more. So, anyways, the point that Charlie Kirk was trying to make, and the point that J.D. Vance talks about towards the end of the interview, being a homeowner drastically skews how you make your how you go about life, basically. You know, you're now invested in the long-term interest of the land because you just made the single biggest purchase of probably your entire life. And how that property fares throughout the rest of your life is going to depend on the laws that are passed, how your neighbors are treating their properties around you, and other, factors outside of you. So you're more invested in your community, you're more invested in the stuff going on outside of you, you're more invested in politics. Whereas if you're a renter, worst case scenario, if rent starts to suck, you just wait until the lease is up and you move. So how you go about seeing the world, how you go about conducting your life changes drastically when you are a homeowner versus a renter. And J.D. Vance said it perfectly. He's like, if people cannot invest, if the younger generation cannot invest, if they have no skin in the game, of course they're going to go for socialism. I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Although something I find interesting is something that this is a little bit off topic. How did Elon Musk become a trillionaire with SpaceX? I keep thinking about this, because it's like, he's got a business, right, that's worth billions and billions of dollars, SpaceX, from my understanding. He's now a trillionaire because SpaceX went public. Well, how does that work when it's not even providing any actual services? SpaceX, I don't think, is providing any actual services as of this moment. Like something where, people can actually buy a ticket to go up into space. Anything. I don't think it's actually making money, it's other than the fact that people are investing in the SpaceX. So to me, that makes no sense, because economics dictate that you have to be making at least some money in order to have like a worthwhile investment or something like that. And so I had heard that apparently, like, a lot of these billionaires are billionaires because they have made these deals with the government. They have all these government contracts, which sounds about right to me. But going back to J.D. Vance, before I go on a complete tangent, I am convinced that he wants to be president, and that is why he did this Joe Rogan interview, and that's why he started in the beginning talking about stuff in a way that he was trying to find a middle ground between the people who lean left and the people who lean right. He starts off with talking about the Iranian war, and he's like, look, the Iranians are going to get a nuclear bomb whether we like it or not. And I was like, yeah, probably right. Probably correct on that. That's a good point. And then he ends it with, like, the younger generation's kind of screwed because they don't have skin in the game. And I'm like, yeah, probably right. Probably correct. I'm like, wait a minute. I had, like, this moment where I was like, he is saying stuff that I agree with for a reason. He's saying this stuff for a reason. And so I was like, why is that? Why is he saying this stuff? I was thinking about this. Why? And it clicked, I'm like, he wants to be president. He actually doesn't care. And he's ultimately going to go ahead and he might be testing the waters with this to see how people react, to see if people like his ideas. But if we go to the comment section, we can see that's not true. They have the exact same thoughts I had. Pausing at the 00 mark to scroll to the comments is the Joe Rogan experience for me now. What am I supposed to do? Push back? Joe Rogan. Saying he's gone down every rabbit hole while having full access to all redacted parent files got me. Me too. JD, I just work here. Vance. Exactly. Peter Thiel. Hey, JD, go check on the DMT guy. Their gaslighting just don't work anymore. If you look close, you can see the strings on Vance's shoulders. The bread is stale and the circus is boring. Yep. How true that is. First time I went straight to the comments in the first few seconds. The Peter Thiel experience, the Palantir experience. Yeah, Palantir's... I was listening to some stuff about Palantir, and they are suspicious. It'll be different it will be different this time around. Trust us. Yep, the oligarch experience. JD, I'd never heard of that, Vance. The swamp experience. I love how Vance acts like he's so surprised with what's going on in the U.S., like he isn't second to the effing president. Yeah, true. It's criminal that Tim Dillon isn't here to co-host. True that. That'd be fun to hear Tim Dillon talk about the Epstein files with the vice president and Joe Rogan. Tim Dillon, I occasionally listen to him, and he's just like, he's got like kind of the defeatist humor where he's like, yeah, who cares that, kids can't buy houses nowadays? It's their fault for buying avocado toast, And then he'll be like, and back when these boomers were living it up in the 90s, living in the house that they bought for $25,000, and they got to live through the greatest economy of all time and eat out every week, now looking at the younger generation being like, grow a spine, and that's how he talks anyways. But here we go. It's a big club, and these two are in it. Yep. I'm 100% convinced that It seems to me like they're flaunting it to our faces. Now, here's the problem I got. J.D. Vance is almost certainly going to be the presidential nominee for the Republicans, and Gavin Newsom's almost certainly going to be the presidential nominee for the Democrats, and I don't like either one for various reasons. I've been to California 5 times growing up. I did not... What happened to California is devastating, not to say the least. When did Gavin Newsom take office? Because I think he took office shortly before my last visit, and it was just it was trash. Like, I remember it was so different than the first time I ever visited California. It was complete trash. Did Newsom? Yeah, when did he become governor first? Okay, back in 2019. So it was trash before he even got there. It's not like he made it better, but it's not like he made it worse either. So, I'll give him that. It was already trash back in 2015. It was a while back. I haven't been there a long time. I'm not really interested in going back. Anyways, I want to take a look at this J.D. Vance file in the Epstein files. This is from New York to undisclosed recipients. So they're already, before they even, this is something to do with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, but it's like, so before they even made this particular document, they were determined to, like, you know, have stuff redacted. Alright. Vice President J.D. Vance has also criticized the newspaper, saying it should be a shame for public to store. What is this even about? Continue reporting. President Trump won't recommend special counsel in Epstein's investigation. Yeah, there we go. So it's talking about, like, how we will not get anything special in the Epstein files, and so there we go. Just let it drop. Just why are we still talking about this? That was the only one where I was, like, reading it, and I thought it'd be interesting. J.D. Vance, your legends in history will treat you well. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that is more interesting than that based off of, like, the... Holy smokes. Got, like, I think, like, 8 saying the exact same thing. J.D. Vance has urged Ray to resign over his leadership of the FBI. That's not interesting. Newsom's got a few more than he does. I'm kind of interested in what it says. It's probably just more like news reports. It's talking about an idea that's hung around California for more than 150 years, closing a state prison. Yeah. It looks like most of it's from the 2020 era. But I want to... I already read these, the Sao Paulo. Yeah, I think that's about everything I wanted to say, just in terms of, like, final thoughts. It's clear that he wants the presidency from my perspective, and it's clear that he's trying to make us forget about the Epstein files. What do you think? Anything beyond that I might be forgetting?
Yeah, it does. I do feel like it is him trying to soft launch his campaign for, what would it be?
2028.
Yeah, 2028. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just getting ahead of that, and he's still covering up the Epstein files, and quite frankly, since he's part of the administration that has simultaneously claimed to uncover it, but yet at the same time cover it up, that's not a good look for his future presidency.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this will be... I don't know, it's like... It's like,
J.D. Vance really is a conspiracy theorist. I don't think he's going to last long in office. Let's be honest. If a real conspiracy theorist became president, they're going to be assassinated very shortly.
Well, he's obviously not, so he's in on it. Like, there's no way he's not in on it.
Yeah.
I'll never believe J.D. Vance is not in on it, especially after the Joe Rogan interview. It's so obvious that he's lying and he's trying to, like, manipulate the public into thinking a certain way so that he gets the presidency. And I'm really kind of fed up with it. Like, I get that corruption's always existed, but for it to be so blatant in our face, and it's like, we would have to, like, figure out how to be one big, happy United States family. Like we were back in 1776 to figure this one out. That's the only way I can see this going down, and I don't see that going down anytime soon. So pray for a miracle, I guess. Yeah.